All right, so we are live on YouTube and recording. This is our Committee of the Whole meeting for July 12th, 2021. So we can call to order at 7:02 p.m. We did have a removal of one item on the agenda, item 4.3. Tony Devlin was not able to make it tonight. And so I do not believe there are any other changes, but we'll entertain any if council has any. Seeing none. All right, on to declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. Again, seeing none. Delegations, presentations, or petitions. We do have Acting Detachment Commander Mark Bishop on the line to present the RCMP report. So Mark, I will hand over to you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate being able to call in again this month. Hopefully next month I can get Zoom back working again. So for June, there was actually a slight decrease compared to last year, which I said the same thing last month for May, which is good to hear. Total calls received were 461. There's going to be a typo at the top of the page. You'll notice it says 441. It should be 461. It seems to be fairly consistent with the priority issues, the family violence, the impaired driving. Every month seems to be fairly steady. For June, there was 14 reports of family violence, which led to 7 individuals being charged, and then 14 reports of impaired driving and 3 individuals being charged. As well, there was a couple driving suspensions issued as well. Overall, like I said, there was the slight decrease. You'll notice there was quite a large decrease in the causing disturbance, mischief, including public intoxication one. That went from 197 to 88 for June. So big decrease there. There was a couple community activities this month they were able to attend. I forgot to mention the Elders Day. We haven't had an officer attend. There was the Pride Parade. There's a bike rodeo, and there's a couple pictures of those there. As well, for the month on the media, there was the 3 separate fires in town in June that hit the media. I forget which part of the month that was. Either way, it was youth involved in it, so there's no sort of enforcement action being taken. There's just more so education on the fire safety piece of it, and that was more so by the fire department, assisted by us. Other than that, we're getting a new officer, brand new from Depot, just getting a training towards the end of July, and they're replacing Constable Tyler Smith, who's actually headed to Fort Good Hope. And other than that, that's it for me in relation to the report, unless there's any questions about the report itself or just any questions or concerns in general.
Thank you. Were there any questions from council? Seeing none. All right. Thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation. And of course, in the interim, before we see you again, I will send anything along that I hear about.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. All right. So with that presentation completed, we can move on to 4.2, the NWT Housing Corporation presentation. Members from Housing Corp are online. We have Janelle Dirksen, Alana Miro, and I believe a third person, and Bright Lubanza is also on the line from CMHC. So from here, I'll hand over to Janelle, as she is the person I see on my screen, and look forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Okay.
Please hold for technical difficulty.
Okay, test.
Much
Think we're
better.
good?
Yep.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. So I'm Janelle Dirksen. I'm the manager of community housing planning with the Housing Corporation. I'm also here with Ravi Lawa, who's our director of policy and planning. We have Margaret Bell, our community relations advisor, and Renee Ristoff, our manager of homelessness and strategic implementation. And then I also have members of my community housing planning team. So we have Chris Van Dyke, Abigail Code, and Sarah Taggart Miles. So we have quite a room full here that you cannot see. These folks will be here to answer any questions as a support to the Community Housing Plans project. So I'm just going to see if Grant can enable screen sharing for me.
Or do you want to share yours?
That's fine. Okay, can everyone see the presentation? Perfect. So today I want to talk about an Inuvik housing plan project. I will go over a high level of what this project is about and then have some time for any feedback from you guys. So you can just switch the screen, Grant. So the purpose of the Housing Plans project is to support community-led planning in a partnership approach, to support more strategic investment in housing, and prepare for federal funding through the National Housing Strategy. This project is guiding principles are community-led, skills development, and strength-based. Go ahead and switch. So what is a housing plan, or what do we mean when we say housing plan? This is a document that captures community-specific housing information. This goes further than just the census or the Bureau of Stats, but a deep dive into the housing situation in Inuvik. It identifies community housing priorities and then establishes an action plan to help meet the needs. Go ahead and switch. Oh, and on that last page, sorry, there was a Wati housing plan link. That was the first strategy that was completed. Wati is a lot smaller than Inuvik and quite different, but it will give you a sense of what this project is about and what it can look like. Okay, go ahead. Some key features of this project is, first off, developing a housing advisory committee. So we recognize there's multiple leadership groups in the community of Inuvik, and we would like involvement from all of them. So creating a housing plan advisory committee is one way to have all the voices in the room to help guide this work. The next key feature is hiring a consultant to help facilitate the community engagement. So what we would do is write a terms of reference and have it approved by the town, the IRC, and the GTC to then go out and get a consultant that can support the actual work on the ground. We would record community information using multiple methods, and we'd have to talk these methods through with the advisory committee. But we can use focus groups, surveys, housing events, workshops, activities for all ages. And we'd continually review what we're learning with community leadership as the plan is developed. So we'd be reviewing with the Housing Advisory Committee, and we could also schedule presentations with the town. And once the plan is fully developed, the Housing Corp would be a partner in monitoring its progress as action items are complete. Some roles and responsibilities. So we've set these out, but we are looking for your feedback on this approach. So we see the town of Inuvik as signing on to a participation agreement with us. as well as the IRC and the GTC to co-develop a housing strategy for Inuvik, to participate in updates and presentations as we do this work and provide your input on the findings. Finally, to adopt the housing plan and lead the implementation, recognizing there's multiple groups involved in actually implementing this plan, but to hold the document as the town of Inuvik as something that you've bought into and adopt. The Housing Corporation would establish partnerships with the GTC and the IRC, hire the consultant. Again, that terms of reference would be reviewed by the town and the other groups. We would work with the consultant to develop the advisory committee and host meetings, develop engagement tools and collect community data, and do the report backs to the leaderships. We would also support the consultant to draft the housing plan and then present it back for adoption. And finally, monitoring the plan with the town and other partners. So we've outlined the planning process in 5 stages. The first stage is the pre-planning. So this is presentations to the leadership groups. This is where we are now. We presented to the GTC earlier today, and we have a meeting with IRC tomorrow. Then we would hire a consultant once all groups are in agreement of what this project should look like. Create an advisory committee, and then start working on the needs assessment. So reviewing background information, creating a community consultation roadmap or plan, and then doing that community engagement. Once we've completed that, we'd create this needs assessment report document that we would bring back to the town and other groups, get your feedback, and then following that, host a housing event or a housing forum to strategically plan out some priorities, some housing priorities for the town of Inuvik, and an action plan on how we can achieve them. Following that is the implementation phase, so follow-up stakeholder meetings, and once everyone is in agreement with the document, adopting it. The final stage is the monitoring. What are the benefits of this work or this project? Communities get to lead the development of their own housing goals. It's more of a bottom-up approach. A planning tool is created that can guide housing investment and advocate for funding or be evidence in proposals. And it's increased opportunities for partnership and hopefully funding. So the next steps that we have is, if the town is interested, we can draft up an agreement to participate. And then we can coordinate with the IRC and GTC to ensure they're on the same page and hopefully get signatories from all groups. Then we'd be setting up a request for proposals to be advertised, to hire that consultant to begin the planning process. And this would include developing that advisory committee with all leadership groups represented. So we'd be looking for someone from the town to sit in on that, whether it's staff or council. So that's a fairly high level introduction to the project. I can take any questions now.
Thanks, Janelle. So are there any questions from council at this time? Councilor Lorraine, go ahead.
Just a few slides back, it said the town, one of the responsibilities would be to, what was the word, oversee implementation. It just gave the impression that this would be kind of handed off as a full-on thing. I just want to make sure that's not what's going on.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think the wording in there was lead implementation, but we do recognize that housing is not one government's full responsibility. We need everyone to achieve or see new housing built. So yes, we would like the town to lead implementation on the things that they can do, but there's also other partners in the room who will have their own set of action items. So by saying lead implementation, it really means lead the action items that the town is designated to do.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? I guess, so to have the plan in place, then I know it kind of mentioned it in the slides, but would give not only the town, the GTC or the IRC opportunity, but anyone in town who wanted to do any kind of development residential wise could use the plan kind of as a jumping off point or a leverage piece when they're looking for funding or other things. Is that kind of the intention, or what one of the uses could be?
Yeah, so the intention is to figure out what the housing gaps are, have that written down, and then to identify priorities, key projects. In doing that, of course, we would have to reach out to any other stakeholders beyond the governments. So any nonprofits, any private developers, and have specific meetings with them to talk about what they're interested in doing. And that would all be part of the strategy and the community engagement portion.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Wood.
I've seen a number of different housing strategies in the past, which never got implemented, I think, which ended up on a shelf in Yellowknife. How is this one any different?
It's a great question. Thank you, Clarence.
You're
So
welcome.
the intention of this strategy is to be community-led, action-oriented, and achievable. So when we do this work, we're looking at concrete projects that can be implemented, small things that can be done right away. We chart out an action plan that has all kinds of things that can be accomplished. And then we would monitor that with the town and the other partners. So we really do want to see action and change come out of this work. And that's why it's developed in the way that it is, really close to the ground with the people who know what needs to happen and what can happen. So that's why it's a different way of doing things. It's not just a government created strategy. It's something that's built from the ground up. And so in that way, we can see it be successful.
Thank you for the explanation. I'll reserve judgment until such time as I see some houses actually being built. But anyway, thanks for trying.
Absolutely. And just to add to that too, this strategy is all funded by the Housing Corporation. And then once it's completed, we'll look at writing proposals for funding. And we have Bright Lubanza from CMHC here to talk about one of those funding options. So this strategy work can help build evidence for proposals for housing projects.
Do we want to invite Bright to speak to that a little bit, since we do have him on the line?
Yes, absolutely. And then we can answer more questions after if you guys have more, but Bright also has a presentation, I believe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Janelle. I will just wait for the presentation up there. So I'll be speaking about the CMHC National Housing Strategy.
Sound is really bad, right?
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Much better. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Your Worship, again, and thank you, Janelle, for the presentation there. So I'll be speaking to the CMHC National Housing Strategy. This is a strategy that was devised about 3 years ago, and it sunsets in 2028. The goal of the strategy is to ensure that every Canadian has a place to call home. There are different items or different arms of the National Housing Strategy. I won't go into all of it. I'll try to focus on the housing continuum, focus on the seed funding and the co-investment, and then I'll take some questions and and have any discussion that can follow up. Now, the National Housing Strategy's focus area is to create new housing throughout the country, and so far we've seen the project, the program really working quite well, and we have been traveling around the territory to increase uptake. And this is why we are also doing a presentation to council to just stimulate interest into the program. I think it's a great opportunity for different entities. At CMHC, we do recognize that housing is just more than a roof over our head. And in order for us to be able to address the housing crisis, which we all know exists in the North or throughout the country, is we realize that we need to create partnerships, we need to get communities involved, and most importantly, we need to have house our people, which are our greatest asset. Next slide. So we're having some technical difficulties. I'll just carry on and then maybe we'll catch on. So what are some of the housing that we address, or what are some of the areas that this housing strategy addresses? So we address homelessness, emergency shelters, transition housing, all the way to market housing, and including home ownership. In a nutshell, the National Housing Strategy is a $40 billion fund, which has, as I mentioned earlier, different areas of focus. And of interest to us tonight is just the National Housing Co-Investment Fund. Now, under the National Housing Strategy, we have provided seed funding, and I'll speak to that. If we can go to the seed. So the seed funding, it's a combination of non-repayable contributions and interest-free loans. So what does this seed funding do? Seed funding actually helps proponents with soft costs, like pre-construction cost, things like putting together a proposal, putting together a business plan, legal fees, development permits, costing out construction. So those soft costs are covered under the seed funding. I have to stress though that a proponent can receive a maximum of $500,000 on seed funding, of which $150,000 is in contributions and $350,000 is in interest-free loans. Now, you find like I'll keep referring to contributions and loans. Our program is a loan first program. However, it does have contributions attached to it. So when we are assessing a client, we assess them on the ability for them to service the loan. And then once we've qualified them to be able to service the full funding of the project, and then we divide that into contributions and loans. So what are some of the eligibility in terms of who is eligible to apply? So basically, everyone, every entity that is willing to create affordable housing is eligible. So we've got community housing providers, municipalities, provinces, territories, indigenous governments and organizations, and the private sector. Sorry, the slide that what you're looking at is a little bit behind. I think it's taking a little longer to switch. So I'll just carry on. Is that okay, Grant? So the seed funding, we do fund new construction and preservation stream. Now, I won't speak about preservation stream because there's no entity in the territory that is currently receiving existing housing program that requires funding under that stream. So we only look at the new construction stream. Now, when we talk about new construction, this also includes repairs. A proponent wants to purchase an existing building to create affordable housing, they can do that and convert that building into a residential building. So that's in a nutshell what the seed funding does. And the seed funding actually, it helps with any of our programs. So if let's say you were applying under a different program, not necessarily the National Co-Investment, you can access the seed funding to prepare for the national housing, also prepare for the next level of funding which which in this case, in our discussion tonight, is National Co-Investment Fund. The National Co-Investment Fund, it's a $13 billion fund. And as I said, it sunsets in 2028. And the way it's been split up is, out of 8.6 billion will go to low cost repayable loans, and then 4.5 billion of that in capital contributions. Project requirements. This is very important. These are the parameters of the project. The project requires at least a minimum of 5 units or beds in a case of a shelter. The project or the building must be primarily be for residential use. Now, we do allow for mixed use buildings. In most cases, however, we will not cover the cost of the non-residential space. The only situation where we can consider the non-residential space to be covered is if that space is an integral part of the residence and for programming. For example, if it's a shelter, you've got maybe space for offices there, or if it were like a transition home, you've got a programming space. So that space can definitely be considered. It does require partnership, hence the co-investment. So it requires another level of government involvement. This government involvement can be territorial, it can be indigenous or municipal government. So here, that's where you come in, and you can play a very big part as a municipality to try to promote affordable housing being built. You can contribute to the project, and you can contribute in a variety of ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be through capital dollars. You can contribute things in kind contributions, like maybe tax, tax waiving, or you can contribute through land discount towards land, discount on services, on development permit. So there are different ways that a municipality can contribute to a project. But of course, monetary contribution is always welcomed. Financial viability is absolutely very important for any project. We are not in the business of trying to create white elephants. We want to make sure that projects are going to be viable. And most importantly, we want to make sure that our clients are not set up for failure. So we do take financial viability we do review it very vigorously. And we need to achieve a minimum of one or greater of the debt coverage ratio. Affordability, absolutely important. We do require that the project have affordability, and in our case, affordability is defined as no more than 80% of the market rate. Now, not every unit need be affordable. The minimum requirement is that 30% of the units need to be affordable. The remaining units can be market units, market rate, like you can ask for full market rent. Having said that, you can have a combination of market rent and affordable units. And or a proponent can choose to go 100% affordable. Energy efficiency is a program requirement, as well as accessibility. Energy efficiency, we measure, we go by the 2015 National Building Code or greater. And some jurisdictions do have a higher standard. So we always ask, like, the proponent can, if at all possible, meet the local jurisdiction or exceed it. Accessibility, we're trying to promote accessibility, as knowing that we've got a sector of our population that is considered a vulnerable population. So we need to make sure that accessibility is addressed. And again, not every unit needs to be accessible. Only 20% of the units need to be accessible. So these are the minimum requirements are quite important, because those would influence the rate of contribution as opposed to the loans. So what is the process for accessing funding under the co-investment? The intake is ongoing, so we don't have, it's a rolling intake. As I said, the program sunsets 2028, and until then, we'll keep on taking application on a rolling basis. But prior to applying, proponents are always encouraged, they have to develop a housing concept. How is the housing needs going to be addressed? How are they going to be addressed? Once that has been, determined and arrived at, and then we can start actually working together and, gathering all relevant information. I do work very closely with proponents once they've decided what housing concept they're going to pursue, and I work very closely with them to make sure that we have a very successful project. After we've gathered all documentation, we do the intake and review starts. It is a very complex application, lots of questions that need to be answered. And then once you've proponents click submit, we do a preliminary review, which can take anywhere up to 0 to 14 days. And then we go to the financial analysis, which really is the longest period, because that takes from anywhere from 30 to 125 days. Once we are satisfied that all the financial analysis have been made and the project is going to be viable, it's going to be a potentially successful project, we issue a letter of intent, which basically is our funding commitment. We are basically at that point saying we are committing to this project. And then from there, we do contract preparation, term sheet is put together. And again, because there's a little bit of back and forth because the proponent is given an opportunity to review the contract or term sheet. That's why it takes about 30 days, because they might have to engage legal counsel to review that and provide them some legal advice on that. After everybody's satisfied with the term sheet, we go to the funding agreement, and then we finalize the agreement. So that is a 7-step process to accessing the co-investment fund. Some of the social outcomes here I've already touched onto it, the importance of financial viability, affordability, energy efficiency, and accessibility. Now, let me just emphasize here the energy efficiency.
Right, can I just interrupt you for 1 minute? You have about 2 minutes left if you need to get to any particular items. Okay.
Very well. Yeah, so maybe I'll just speak to give you an example of a project that has been funded under the co-investment is the Evans Pavilion in Yellowknife, which is CMHC made a contribution of $33.7 million to that project. So this is a good example of different levels of participation. We had the territorial government involved and going to a non-profit. So it's the funding does work, and we've got a number of projects in the pipeline that will be making announcements fairly soon. I think I can take if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll go to council now. Did you have any questions for Bright? Since we do have him on the line. I'm not seeing any hands raised. It is interesting to see how how it can all work and how many proponents can be involved. So yeah, I mean, we need to have, I think, the housing strategy in place before we start applying for funding, but certainly it gives you hope on how you could see things come to fruition over time. So one more call here to council. Did you have any questions for Mr. Lubanza while he's on the line? And I'm seeing none. So thank you very much, Bright, for your presentation tonight. I guess I'll also ask council, did you have any further questions overall for the group that's presented on housing or CMHC? And seeing none. All right, so with that, I will say thank you to the whole crew who came down and made the presentation. Maybe we'll just take a minute. I believe Councillor Miro will be taking over a computer up there or participating through SAO Hood's computer. I'm not really sure, but we'll just take a couple minutes.
And just thank you from Housing Corporation. We'll head out now. It was great to meet you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Janelle. And the team. Grant, if you could just indicate when you're good to go, that would be great.
So Mayor Kulikowski, I don't know if you want to continue or how you want to work or give it another minute break.
Okay. I mean, the next two items I think we could handle while there's still folks in the room, if that's good. Public question period, I don't believe there were any that I'm aware of, and adoption of the minutes of the June 23rd, 21 council meeting. Was there any questions or discussion on those minutes? All right, and then the action items list. There are a few updates on the list. One that I know Councillor Wood will be happy to see is that the number 12, the ski club lease, has moved forward another step. It's not quite in place yet, but we are another step further in the process. Work has started at the Peggy Curtis fields. On the homelessness and public intoxication front, there has been a homelessness coalition committee created here in town. SAO Hood was able to attend their first meeting 2 weeks ago. Tourism gateway sign installation is complete of the sign. There is some work happening there now with the gravel. Chief Jim Coy Park foundation has been designed, and the space frame foundation, which is for the new tourism reception building. The survey, I understand, is now been tabulated, and now we have to have a Parks and Rec meeting in order to review the numbers, and then from the committee, a recommendation will come to council. Sorry, what else is updated here? We did receive some response from AMS about the ambulance response times and locations, mostly in that there was a miscommunication somewhere along the way. They do have the letter now, and SAO Hood has been in contact. So we look forward to some correspondence on that. Yeah, so were there any questions on the action items list then? Councillor Wood.
Not a question. I just wanted to thank all the staff involved in the gateway sign, number 1. I've received a lot of positive comments and surprisingly no negative ones. So that's a win for us. Secondly, the staff involved with Jim Cooley Park. I've received a lot of positive comments on not only the pavilion, but the fact that work is actually going on there. So my thanks, and I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Wood. Any further conversation, questions, discussion on the action items list? None. With that, we can move on to item 8.1, amendments to the Town of Inuvik fees and charges policy. I just want to check with SAO Hood if he's good now.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Great. All right, so this item is to bring our fees back to pre-COVID amounts. A lot of them had been reduced by half or more in order to accommodate everything that was going on. Are there any questions from council on this item? We do have Director Samir and of course SAO Hood here. Councillor Loreen.
I'm just wondering what the dollar amount was, if we have that information, how much of an impact it made, how much we were actually out for this fee change. And if it's not substantial, I'd be okay with keeping it where it is, but I just like that information.
Okay,
I don't have the exact amount. We'd have to go back and look and compare, but I can tell you right now on the, probably from the gym alone, it probably cost us in fees, probably $60,000 or $70,000 in lost revenue by reducing the fee. Just partially because then we just couldn't have access as much as possible and things like that. That's one of the reasons why we reduced the fee, is because of the reduced availability of the facility, not necessarily because it doesn't cost us any more to run. In fact, it costs us more. So if you look at all the extra staff time we had to put in for the extra cleaning and things like that and reducing the fees, it was significant.
That's fair. Thank you very much. Thanks, Grant.
thank you. I just had a clarification question. The item here talks mostly about the fitness center, but does this, like, everything's going back to normal, squash, drop zone, and I mean in usage is allowed to go back to normal? And then also, is the tree house going to be back open for birthday bookings and things like that?
I believe that we're working on a program to bring everything back, including the library, back up to normal operations. We just have to do some WSCC paperwork as far as risk mitigation goes, and then we will go further from there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council on this item? Seeing none. All right, on to 8.2, the vacant and derelict property bylaw. This is third reading. First and second were passed back in January, I do believe. There's been quite a few changes made, including council had some questions about the timelines, and then also the legality of entering properties, which we've had our legal team working on, and they've been sorted through. So are there any questions from council then?
I have one.
Okay. Lana has one.
So I have a question.
Councilor
Are we
Merrill, go ahead.
covering off anything that their lot become overgrown with trees and shrubs?
Yes.
It is covered?
Yes, it talks about, I have to go back and look at it, but it talks about different things of, where is it? Pardon me I have to look it up. Ensure the property secured. I saw it in there somewhere, sorry.
The reason I ask, it's rather ironic, but the two lots on Spruce Hill Drive are in terrible shape. The two that are owned by Parks Canada.
I think.
So vegetation is defined, which leads me to believe that it's defined actually any plant that is susceptible to combustion. And so, Grant, I don't know if that helps you find where it is in there. I do recall seeing a section on.
It's in the, sorry, Mayor Kulka, it's in the unsightly land and premises bylaw. Vegetation is covered.
Okay.
All right, Councilor Merrill, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Loreen, I believe you had your hand up.
No, I was because you said 8.2, I got confused there. This is 9.1. Sorry, my mistake. Just very small.
That's me. Yep, my mistake. Sorry, guys, folks. So we did receive one email on this item back in May from a concerned resident, and I've reviewed it. There are some suggestions within it. Currently, the work we've done to bring a little more into this bylaw, I think, will help to address some of the concerns that the person had raised. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, this looks pretty good. We have some real opportunities within here now to have our municipal enforcement officers be able to apply this, where in the past we weren't. It just wasn't really all that applicable, and so I just wanted to say thank you to admin for working so hard on this. But yeah, I'll definitely entertain any other questions here from council at this time. I'm seeing no hands raised. All right, there will be opportunity, of course, on Wednesday if anything does come up, but we can move on then to 9.2, which is the unsightly land premises bylaw. Again, it has been redesigned a little bit, worked on to have a little bit more teeth. Again, we'll entertain anything from council at this time. See none. The two are very clearly related. I think it was a very good choice to work on both at the same time. They do work together in so many ways. So if there are no questions, and I'm seeing none, then we'll move on to 9.3, the bylaw enforcement officer appointment. This is third reading and can be completed on Wednesday. Are there any questions or comments on the bylaw this evening? Oh, Councillor Wood.
Just curious, how many applications did we receive for this position?
I don't think we do HR questions, but I'll ask SAO Hood.
I'm not at liberty. I don't have the answer for you at this moment in time.
Okay.
And on to 9.4 then, the tax reduction bylaw. This will be first and second reading of the bylaw for a property where a house was removed. Are there any questions from council at this time? No. All right, we can move on then to our department head reports. 10.1, the planning and development report. Any questions or comments on the report? See none. On to 10.2, the economic development and tourism report. Questions or comments? As you can see from the report, the team has been very busy, as they usually are in June, and they pulled off some great events so far. So great work there. Any questions from council? See none. On to the SAO's report. Questions from council? See none. The capital projects report. So you can see a lot of projects are moving forward. Again, no questions. On to the community services report. Any questions? Public services report. No questions coming forward. Protective services report. Did we receive the protective services report? I don't believe we did.
I believe it was sent out late this afternoon. I think it was received at least. So we can ensure that it got sent out, and then for Wednesday's meeting if it hadn't been sent out to council yet.
Great. All right, and then on to our information items. Item 11.1, the Aurora Research Institute research notifications. Any items under council concerns this evening? Seeing none, all right. We do have an in-camera item tonight, so I will need a motion to move in camera, please. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Wainman. We'll just take a moment to stop the recording and the live stream. Thank you to the directors for attending.
Just Mayor Kulikowski, I think you have to vote on going in camera, then
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, may we please have all in favor? Councillor Loreen, come back.